All right, welcome back, fellow jazz bums. Today we're having a conversation with Jacob Wendt. He's a jazz drummer and educator. He's got a new album, Silver Street, that's going to be coming out this month. We're going to talk about his life, his jazz career, and his new record. And to get us started, I'll kick it over to Felipe.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome back to the channel. We're missing Mike today, missing in action, unfortunately. So today we have Jacob Wendt, who is a musician, composer, music director. He's an educator, originally from the Bay Area, now located in LA. He started very early in the instrument. At the age of 6, he was already playing the piano. Then he switched to many other instruments. He actually played multi-instruments. But he is currently a drummer in his own band, heavily influenced by jazz and R&B from the drumming, the greats from the 50s and 60s. Has a very unique style, has headlined many bands, has released records as a leader, Jacob Wendt Quartet in 2011, as a co-leader, Carter White Wendt in 2013, and a collection of original compositions as a sextet live at the Blue Whale 2020. Today, to talk about his latest project, Silver Street, which is coming out on his own label, Hayden Records. Welcome to the channel, Jacob Wendt. Pleasure to have you, and let's break that down and talk everything about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Thank you. Cool.
Awesome. So where we usually start with everyone is talk about your musical influences as a kid, maybe what your parents were listening to, how you got into music, and how you got into jazz.
Yeah, I definitely grew up. My folks weren't musicians per se, but there was always some kind of music on in the house. And I grew up in this really small town called Sebastopol in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. And I just remember listening to the radio a lot of AM, FM, just oldie stations. It was mostly doo-wop music, Motown, and a lot of 60s folk kind of music. So just the Supremes, Temptations, Mamas and the Papas, a lot of one-hit wonder type groups from the 50s and 60s too. That mixed with my dad was just really, really into Frank Sinatra. So just hearing a lot of that. And of course, the Beatles and early Rolling Stones. And it was that kind of mixture. No jazz at all, really, outside of Sinatra and maybe some Tommy Dorsey era kind of big band music. Mm-hmm. And started playing piano, taking some piano lessons, and then just picked up different instruments over time. Picked up guitar and bass in middle school and guitar. And in the middle school band, you couldn't play guitar in a concert band setting. Mm-hmm. So they said, well, you can play the bass, and they would give me upright bass or tuba parts to play. And when I was at that school, the local high school actually needed a bass player. And I guess my director put in a word, and they had me go over there for their zero period every morning at like 7 a.m, play in the jazz band. And it was a very, very traditional Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller type big band setting. And so I got that experience just every morning, and then would go right over to the middle school and play some concert band music. And that carried out through just all my middle school and high school. I was either playing bass, or in my high school, actually, after a few years, there were maybe 8 bass players, and the school owned 4 basses. So they just had me switch over to tuba. So then I was playing tuba in all these groups. I always had the most awkward, difficult instrument to carry around, no matter what I was playing. And it was more like my junior year of high school, maybe junior or senior year of high school. There was a jazz band in my high school, but it was kind of a makeshift, not quite a big band, more than a combo, just kind of a for fun, once or twice a week after school. And there was a drummer in that group, and he graduated. And I had started playing guitar in that group just because I was more into guitar at that time, and very quickly realized, I played a lot of pop and rock and blues guitar, and jazz guitar is really different. So I was trying to figure that out. And right around that time, the drummer in the group graduated. and we just needed someone to fill in on drums, and I could kind of keep time and knew roughly how it was supposed to sound. So I just started filling in and just kept doing it. It was always kind of what instrument needs to be filled, and I'm just going to fill that role, was kind of always how I fell into different instruments and different styles. And my high school director, I was trying to figure out, I was trying to get into jazz more, and he gave me some advice. He said, well, just go to Amoeba and pick up anything that says Blue Note on it. I said, okay. It was pretty good advice. I went into the shop, and just by total chance, the first 2 or 3 records that I found was Art Blakey, Mosaic, and Dexter Gordon's Go. And then it's not Blue Note, but I saw a copy of Giant Steps. It's like, well, I know that name. I think I should get that one. And so those were just the first 3 records, or they were on CD, but the first 3 albums that I was exposed to in a modern setting. And Speak No Evil as well. He actually, my director, lent me his copy. So that really just set the precedent for me of what is this music? Who are these people? And just going on, not Discogs, but going on Wikipedia and just, okay, I got this Art Blakey record, and oh, he's also on this record, and oh, Wayne Shorter plays on this Blakey record, but he's also on Speak No Evil, but he's also here. And just that web and the discovery of it was like a obsession for a while.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Yeah, it's a never ending thing. But so when you got into those records, you focus yourself on the drums directly, or you wanted to you were still, what I'm gonna do, or no, it's a drumming thing. That's the drum that I like here.
Yeah. I can't say exactly what it was that I think, especially for the Mosaic record, there was something about Blakey's playing that, it's his style. He's doing these big shuffle grooves. He's doing, even with some of the Latin stuff, or the up-tempo swing, where it's got a little bit of a Latin-esque ride pattern to it. Something, just that heavy groove element to it, I think, was just very familiar, coming from listening to a lot of 50s and 60s R&B, soul, or even rock pop kind of stuff. And I think the instrumentation, maybe just that front line of the 3 horns, was something that I hadn't I had heard that, as in Motown or Stax, those are kind of, I won't say backup supporting parts, but they certainly weren't the melody or the focus. So to hear that, but without vocals on top of it, was really interesting. Just the different forms of the tune, it's not just straight up verse, chorus, bridge, just having kind of a different roadmap. That was really interesting. And just the sound of it, also hearing it, those ones specifically, the Rudy sound and Blue Note, they hit really differently, hearing those horns versus what backup horns would have sounded like on someone else's record or in a big band setting. Yeah. So yeah, something about it really grabbed me, and not even drums per se. I mean, definitely drums. Definitely Blakey was the reason that I got into playing drums. But I don't know. It took me a while to, how do I say this? I think at that point the drums, it's not like I was only into the drums. I think it was just I was into the whole sound of the group in that setting, in that instrumentation.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Mosaic I think was one of the first Blakeys I ended up getting, like on vinyl. And yeah, Mosaic has a special. I remember those drum parts and drum solos. I think on side 2, they're really, really catchy. They're really, really powerful. I remember that for sure.
You talked about specific areas. How did Giant Steps hit you when you first started?
I was in the other room. I wish I could show it to you, because you guys have been talking about CDs the last few months. And I still have my original like Sony Walkman
sweet.
a little compact player. And so to back up, I should mention, I went to this high school that was slightly out of the district where I lived. So it was a little bit further to get to. And it basically ended up being 2, sometimes 3 buses each way. So I would have like an hour, not quite an hour and a half, an hour and change each way, where I was just sitting there with, this is early 2000s, and I've got not these kind, but like the little wraparound headphones and the CD player. And I'm sitting on the bus listening for at least 2 to 3 hours a day, listening to the same record over and over again, and just absorbing that sound, not even with a musical analysis intention, just hearing it over and over again, which I feel this is kind of a whole nother thing we could go off on. But I feel like that's something that's just really lost now with the streaming and younger players in music school, like going into a record store and buying just a few CDs, maybe a few at a time, and then just sitting with the same one over and over. And I might have been able to have a few different albums in my bag with me, but maybe I just had Giant Steps in there, and that's just all I listened to for 2 to 3 hours a day for the week. And then maybe I'd put something new in for the next week. So that was still way too early for me to have absorbed, harmonically, like, that's a flat 13 to whatever, I wasn't listening to it on that kind of level, or would have been able to, but just the overall feel and sound of it, and just having that subconsciously be absorbed into my playing a bit. And so especially for those 3 records, it's, Art Taylor or Blakey or Billy Higgins on the Dexter Gordon record. And so just, and not even quite knowing those people's names yet, but just knowing like the feel and the sound of how that music is approached and what it should feel and sound like, not necessarily harmonically, but just the overall feel and sound, the groove of it. The Mosaic record, Go, Giant Steps, those were some of the first ones. But then also, maybe the next week I have a Beatles album in there. Or actually, this is something I wanted to mention. I bought this record once, and it ended up being a very kind of life-changing album. It was one of the first CDs I ever remember buying, and it was kind of an impulse buy. And I was like, I don't know, 13, 14. And I was at this coffee shop, and I saw this CD, and it had Ray Charles on it. And I thought I was buying a Ray Charles record. I didn't read it very carefully. And it turned out to be this album called Artist Choice Music That Matters Too. And that one was Ray Charles. So it was basically Ray Charles making a mix CD of all of his favorite songs. So it's just all these jazz and R&B tunes. And, Art Tatum, Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, Woody Herman. Is it Woody Herman on there? Just this great mix of kind of a sampler of some big band, some small group stuff. And the Art Tatum track was a solo recording of How High the Moon. And that one, I remembered listening to that track over and over, trying to figure out like, what is this? And it just had all these peaks and valleys of faster tempo, slower tempo, a build up, something happening in the left hand down here and something else in the other hand. I remember listening to that one over and over again. I think there's some Sarah Vaughan on there, or some Ella. So it's just a great compilation that
we're opening a treasures chest, sounds like.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, here's 10, 15 new artists to go check out.
Exactly. So you were in high school in the early 2000s, basically, or?
Yeah, 2003 to 2007 was high school for me. And probably around 2001 or 2, middle school is when I think I got that compilation, I think a year or 2 before high school. Cause I remember the main track I really remember from that record, now that I think of it, is there's a Hank Jones trio track on there called We're All Together, from his trio with Wendell Marshall and Kenny Clark. And it just brushes the whole time. and it's a pretty straightforward AABA form of a tune. But when they trade, they start, it's kind of 4s, but it's also 8s, and sometimes it's 12. And just this concept of the band stopping and then the drums going and then the band going back and forth, and me trying to figure out, like, is this in time, or is there sections to this? Like, how are they counting this? I remember in middle school listening to that one over and over, trying to understand like how that was working with the band, because they were definitely, now that I think of it, the song's called "We're All Together." They were definitely playing around with, even though we're trading different lengths of measures, the form was still intact.
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing Kenny Clark's brushes for like an hour or two a day, that's going to help.
So your first recording is from 2011 as a leader. So how was this leap to becoming like a professional musician? How did that happen?
Yeah, so Silver Street is definitely the first. This record is the first one as a leader where it was really an intentional project all the way through. The first, the quartet record that I did was, it ended up being that, but it was a thing of, I kind of had some studio time booked that I was going to be able to use, and I was trying to figure out what to do with it. I literally met the sax player that's on that record the day before we recorded at a rehearsal.
Oh, wow.
And so, and bass and piano, we had been friends for a long time, and sax player was friends with them. So that was kind of, and I was maybe 21, 22. That was just right after I had finished my undergrad program. And a friend of mine that worked at the school had this studio, kind of a makeshift thing. And we just went in there and played some tunes, and mostly originals of mine. And I told everyone, yeah, just bring whatever you want. And sax player brought in a tune, and no one else brought in anything. So it ended up being basically just all my stuff with his song. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'll just put this out as a record, as my thing. But we did do, similar to this record with that quartet record, we did do it in the style where everybody's just in the same room in a circle, because that's just the space that we had. No headphones or anything. We're just live in the room. And that just made a lot of sense to me, just having looked at all these photos of recording sessions from Blue Note especially, and just recordings of that era, or even the Sinatra ones where the whole band is in the room. I don't know if he was in the room himself or if that was just staged for the photo, but just that concept of playing together just made sense to me of, how are we going to do this if we're all in separate places? So that first record kind of, what's the word? It ended up being a record of mine, but it wasn't like from the beginning, it wasn't, I want to go and record with these people, this music, this kind of sound. And I had no knowledge at all, and probably very little interest in knowing how mixing and mics work and setup. And my friend who worked at the school, I just said, like, do whatever you want. You can mix it however. I said, this is kind of my model. I like this Blue Note stuff. And so he went and did some listening and searching, but I just let him do everything. I was not involved at all in the production. And then with that trio record, it was more of a collaborative thing. That piano trio, we've been together now off and on for 10, 15 years, all kind of different settings. And so I think that's like a third my tunes, a third Doug's tunes. And Doug is also on that record. He's also the pianist on Silver Street. It's some of his tunes, and then a few standards that we all arranged together. And that was a very different type of recording experience where we were all in separate rooms, separate booths with headphones. Blake, the bass player, was actually like in a different room where we had to watch him on a camera and a screen. It was challenging for sure. I had never done anything like that. And I remember at the time thinking, like, I liked how the sound ended up being, but the experience of recording it was like, I think that always made an impression for me going forward of, I think for whatever benefit there is sonically to have everyone be separate like that, I think there's going to be more benefit if we're all just together and we don't need as many takes, or we don't need to edit stuff, because the initial performance, I think, is going to be stronger if we're all just right here. Then, it's easier to fix things if we have isolation and separate rooms and all that. But I think the performance might suffer a little bit.
That makes sense.
So I remember thinking, okay, next time we do something, we'll do it that other way. And then I just didn't do anything for 10 years until now.
So you take a step back. Where'd you go to school? So university.
Yeah, I did my undergrad at UC Irvine, and then finished that. I was there 2007 to 11. Almost 10 years later, I started a grad school program at Cal Arts right before COVID, and then when COVID started, and then I ended up going to Cal State Fullerton to finish my master's. At UCI, I was there. Kei Akagi he's just retired. He was the head of the program, and he was the last pianist for Miles Davis.
Oh, wow.
So just taking like any class that I took with him, especially any history class, and we're talking about Miles, like he was in the band. He has firsthand experience. He was, I think at the time, I know Kenny Garrett was in the group for a while at that time. I want to say Tom Brecklin was on drums. But, Kay had played by that point. He was with Airto and Miles, Al Di Meola, Alan Holdsworth. I think he did some stuff with Freddie Hubbard, Stanley Turrentine. Wow. So just having that firsthand experience, and, we would take a composition class from him, and he would go through everything. Like, it's not just one style. He had us writing hard bop stuff or bebop. He had us writing some fusion stuff, some free music. We did some smooth jazz. Like, we really covered everything. And actually, the oldest tune on the Silver Street record, Cretaceous, it was one of the first things I ever wrote, and it was in his composition class.
Oh, very cool.
With that week, we were supposed to just write a blues, and I said, okay. And I was still pretty young, and I wrote some, like, kind of almost like a big bandy, kind of a throwaway riff melody blues, and it wasn't happening. And he's like, okay, listen to this. And he gave me what's the Sonny Rollins tune I'm thinking of on saxophone Colossus? Blue 7.
Oh yeah, Blue 7's great. Yeah.
He said, write something like this. And so I said, okay. So I listened to it. So that's why I'm, it's okay. It starts with kind of bass and drums, and then it's got something kind of flat 5, like a little out kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. And that's how I based the tune. I think a lot of my tunes, I think, come out that way. It's, whatever I've been listening to a lot of, or I want to do something that sounds kind of like this, mm-hmm. but it's my own thing, and just write something around it.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So after you've spent all this time going to college, what are you doing besides that? Your education, like, what's your day gig, I guess?
Yeah, a combination of all that. Right now there's about 3, I think soon to be 4 middle schools and high schools that I do coaching clinic work at with the jazz bands. And then a lot of other schools that might do more, independent visit things, but I'm pretty regular at some of these other schools. There's a jazz camp that myself and Doug and Jimmy on the record, there's a summer camp that we teach at for the Jazz Week. I have a lot of private students as well. And then just a combination of casual work, still doing, weddings, private parties, restaurant stuff, and then different original projects, either of mine or other people's in the area. Just always having a balance of playing and teaching work.
Now let's talk about the label. What came first, like the label or the record? And I noticed that you always wanted to you was always in pursuit of a specific sound or a way to record, I think, from your first recording. When did you realize, okay, it's time to make a proper record, planned? And am I going to make a label for releasing the record, or just the label was a consequence? How did that come?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of a few things. Definitely, I'd say about 2 years ago, I knew, okay, I've got a lot of tunes. I have a lot. There was even more that ended up on the record that I was thinking to do, but I had a lot of tunes. I really wanted to put something out. A lot of people that I was playing with regularly that were into the music. So I knew I wanted to do this record. And by that point, you know, especially the time of the first two records, well, at least during the very first record, I had really no knowledge or interest in production. Mm-hmm. And then by the second record, I had a little bit more idea, but still not a ton. And then over the last few years, especially actually right before COVID, being a drummer, it's pretty standard when people do remote tracking and they can record stuff at home. Being a drummer, there's a lot more work involved with being able to mic yourself at home. Mm-hmm. If you're a sax player, maybe you just have a mic. Piano, maybe you have to. For proper remote drum tracks, I mean, people are looking for multiple overheads, snare, top and bottom, bass, but it forces you to be a little bit more, not just a little bit, it forces you to be pretty good at engineering and mixing and getting all the levels and what type of mics. And just prior to COVID, there was a lockout rehearsal space that I had that I made into a little bit of a home studio setup. And so I just started getting really into mics and mic placement and what type of mics and, you know, what kind of mics did so-and-so use, or what's the setup for this kind of sound, especially for drums, where they say, oh, we want a real 60s drum sound, or we want a real 70s drum sound, or 80s. Like, you gotta know not just what the type of drum to use and how to tune it and what kind of heads, but also the mic placement and the treatment. So I started getting really heavily into becoming aware of that. And with Blue Note especially, and Rudy being kind of my favorite, just the thing that I would gravitate towards. I had already been a big vintage drum nerd for a long time, but now it became, okay, well, how do I be a vintage nerd with the mics too? And luckily I don't need 10 mics. I just need one overhead, maybe a snare or something, and a bass drum mic. And all these records that I listened to, 50s and 60s, Motown, Stax, you know, even Wrecking Crew kind of stuff, the Wall of Sound, just one overhead and a bass drum mic sounds great. You know, if the room sounds great, and if the player sounds great, and if the band sounds great. So started going down that avenue and just really getting that dialed in, and just researching how to get that sound. And it really came full circle. That kind of confirmed with me, oh yeah, everybody's in the same room, just minimal mics. You're going to get a little bit of a bleed sound, and there's a little bit of room sound to it, but you can use it to your advantage and make it sound nice and full. So I knew I wanted that kind of vibe for sure. I was looking at some different room options, and where we ended up going, Paul Taverner at Big City Recording. He's a really great drummer, really great engineer, producer, and he's got like a main room, and he does have some different ISO booths and all that. But I just knew this is about the size of the room. It's very similar to more of a Hackensack era Rudy sound. Not as big as Inglewood Cliffs or anything, but just a nice room. The room sounds nice, amazing piano. And if you get the right players in there that can play the room and play to each other, there isn't really much mixing that needs to be done. You just have the mics open in the room and they're live, and we just play to that. And that also, I think, pairs really well with the style that we're going for of, you know, a certain era vibe. Yeah. And then there is no, you know, overdub or let me redo this or that. It's just, we have live takes at a time. And as far as putting that on a label goes, I was kind of shopping around some places that might be interested, and wasn't finding tons of people that were super into taking on a project where they don't know me or the project at all. But also, by this point, I was getting so particular about what I wanted, and not that I have to be totally in control all the time, but especially as a drummer, if you do go into a booth and there's a bunch of mics on there, you're kind of giving up control of your sound to someone else. And if it was someone like Paul, he's great, and I would trust him. But the idea being, I really want it to sound how I want it to sound, and I think that's going to necessitate that I'm a little more in control of all these steps. And as far as the rest of the production goes as well, with the artwork and photography and graphic design, and if I want to really emulate a certain thing, and just to be able to have a vision of what I want it to be, and not have to change it depending on what other people want it to be. So just to have it, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but
production. I mean, you want to be the producer, basically, right?
Yeah, in like a uncompromising kind of a way.
Yeah.
It's got to look like this, or it's got to sound like this, or like one thing I will say with Paul is, we would record something, and I'd be thinking about how to tweak it, and he would ask me something like, yeah, tell me, like, what is your favorite sounding, like, you keep talking about Blue Note, like, what's your favorite sounding record, and we can make it sound like that. And I would bring something in, and he goes, okay, but remember I said, what is your favorite sounding record? Not the music, not the performance, but production. Which one is your favorite? And it really forced me to hear stuff differently, because I would bring in, I remember bringing in, I think it was Night Dreamer, brought on the Wayne Shorter record. And we put it up side by side to our thing, and we're listening to it. And he's like, this is how you want it to sound? And again, I love that record. It's one of my favorite records of all time. But the sax is just very loud compared to the rest of the band, and the piano's kind of under. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's something about, obviously, the performance and the music itself is what captures me. He goes, okay, we could do something that hits at that without being exactly that. And if you go back and listen to the Dexter Gordon Go record, and especially the version I have was the RVG CD, and I listen to it now, and Cheesecake starts, and Butcher Warren is playing bass, and then when Billy comes in with that cymbal, it's so loud and bright. And I thought, yeah, maybe we won't go all the way there,
Right?
but I want something that pays some homage to that, but still can be classified as a modern recording, but not all the way contemporary. In a jazz setting, I just can't stand when it's like hi-hat here, splash here, a ride here, tom here.
Right.
Rock and pop stuff is different, but in a jazz setting for this kind of music, I just want drums to be one thing. So something like that with the Rudy thing is, okay, let's have the horns be a little bit up front from the rest of the band, and that way it sounds like front line, second line, things that we can take from that. And one thing that we did do that was kind of opposite of Rudy, instead of having trumpet left and sax on the right, we did switch that. Okay. And that also, I think, was just partially from the setup of the room. Like, sax player was already closer to me than trumpet, and if we kept the drums on one side and then put the sax on that side, you'd have even more drums on that same channel. So it kind of helped to balance it a bit. But all that to say, yeah, it was really like we wanted to have kind of that old school classic sound, but clean it up a little bit, but not so much that now it just sounds like a polished contemporary recording.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you were shopping around the project, hadn't recorded anything yet? Like when you're talking to labels and stuff?
Yes and no. Like, because I think I was looking. I think I did wait until we had recorded something.
Okay.
But I didn't have any promo things yet. I didn't have any examples really. I think there were a few labels that I reached out to before we had done the project just to introduce myself. And, 8 out of 10 of them didn't respond.
Right,
and then
right.
And then 1 or 2 said, thanks for reaching out. Like we have a lot of not inquiries, we have a lot of things like this coming in at this time. As you understand, we can't really say yes right now.
Mm-hmm.
So again, but I think it ended up being a good thing in that it kind of forced me to not, I won't say give up the project to someone else, but to force you to follow through with whatever vision you initially had.
Yeah.
And the label itself, Hayden, actually comes from, that's the name of the street that I grew up on in Sebastopol. So it was kind of this, kind of a homage to just, origins, where I started playing music, where I fell in love with the music, just, that lineage of just kind of beginnings, I guess. So Hayden Records.
Do you have a copy of the record there you can show us?
I do. I just got these in literally 2 days ago. And this is it. I'm trying to get the shine on there.
Very nice.
So I got the backside. Very, very, 28-point cardstock, heavy jackets, laminate front. This is Brian Bixby, great photographer. Also did a number of people's projects, but I think he did the Anthony Wilson stuff Ben's record.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So, and I had done a few different shoots with Brian before, and so I knew instantly. Oh yeah, like if I want that style, I'm gonna get him to come in.
It's a great cover photo, man.
Yeah,
it really is that's a great photo. Love it.
And I was very particular with the with how I wanted everything to be, the graphic design stuff, and I'd done some mock-ups of my own. And the really interesting thing about this, just it's funny to me now, just going full circle, is that the graphic designer that I worked with on this is Gordon G. His name's down here. And I knew loosely that he had been involved with Blue Note, but I didn't really know the full extent. He doesn't live in this area, so mostly we were just on the phone or through email. That's how we were working together. And I would send him little mock-ups, and he would kind of create it for me. And at this point, I realized, I felt like I was not being demanding, but I was so specific. It was like Jimmy made this analogy. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like you hired this gourmet chef, but then told him, like, make me this box of mac and cheese.
Yeah.
It's like, Jacob, you already know what you want. Like, why don't you just go do it? Well, I need like a professional to lay it out for me correctly. It's like, yeah, but now I'm kind of taking away their ability to do the design. Like now they're just kind of making your thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I hired him. But all that to say, so I knew he had loosely been involved, or he'd been involved with Blue Note. I just didn't know exactly what he had done for them before. And just a few weeks ago, you guys have been doing the CDs a bunch, and I was listening to some of my CDs, and I'm listening to my Dexter Gordon Go, and I'm reading through the liner notes, and that's the first record I ever bought. It's the RVG, and right there in the liner notes, like design Gordon HG. I'm like, what? And I realized like he worked with all of the RVG series.
Oh, okay.
So like the records that got me into this music, obviously he did the covers or the reissue stuff, but maybe the back design and specifically the inside design with like all the different lines and colors and all that. Like that's him on every single RVG that I have. And I realized, I didn't even realize like I got that same guy to do.
That's amazing.
This thing. So it was, and I didn't even realize that till like after we had kind of wrapped up the artwork stuff. So I've been meaning to tell him that story. But yeah, it was just a very full circle moment. Like unintentionally, that's who I got to do this.
Very
That's
nice.
cool.
I've always been really into typography and typeset, and just really analyzing like what kind of font are they using here and how is this aligned, and just so I would go and pick some of my favorite Blue Note covers, and anything Reed Miles is great, but there are specific ones that really stand out to me, and saying, okay, well this font here, they've got Franklin Gothic here, okay, they got News Gothic on this, and how can I recreate something in that style and get the colors to kind of match correctly. And the front is obviously very, very just blatantly Blue Note, but for the back, this is still very Blue Note, but I kind of went a little bit more Riverside Atlantic up here with the box text, and something that, I didn't want Blue Note to sue me, but something that just has, a little uniqueness to it. And
I think it turned out great.
And especially with this era, thank you, with this era of a production, for me, just a single jacket, like the gatefold is awesome, but something that's really of that era, late 50s, just a heavy cardstock single jacket. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, it is indeed a great graphic project. The pictures, they really came out terrific on the record. Is a great project, Jacob, for sure. And to start with, it's your first release, but you already been to the big guys out there, right? You work with Kevin, you work with RTI, you Stoughton, and you have Mike helping selling, distributing. Although you're going to be everywhere. So how did this network emerge? Did you first go to Kevin? How was that?
I mean, so just to back up and give it some context, honestly, a part of it was through the Jazz Bums. I've been really, I mean, I don't know if you could see this earlier.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice. Cool. Thank you.
Just over the last year or so, just the more I was getting into vinyl, and just I don't have to explain to you guys, just the whole world that vinyl is, and just different production styles and different types of pressings and different, who's cutting different lacquers and repress versus, when I was getting these CDs, early 2000s, when I was getting into jazz, I didn't know or care about any of that. I just thought a CD is a CD, and now I can say, oh, what's funny is that my copy of Mosaic is an 80s Ron McMaster first era transfer Blue Note, and I have a RVG of Go. And my freshman year at UCI, they had this music library with tons of records and vinyl back there. And I would go in and I would take my laptop. It still had a 1/8 inch input, and I would just plug that in from a receiver and just record on GarageBand. I would just rip the records back there. And I remember it was Horace Silver in the Jazz Messengers, the blue one. And I had no idea what I was doing in terms of what copy that is, or did I get the right kind of adapter piece, or, it was probably like a electronically rechanneled 70s or 80s copy going into this receiver that might have been stereo, might have been mono, who knows, going into my GarageBand to bounce down to an MP3 with no EQ effects.
Right.
I was just listening for the music. But the more over that time that I was really discovering just how stuff was produced and who was produced by and what type of pressing, and I realized, all my favorite records happen to be from this engineer, or the best sounding ones happen to be this. And I really like the jackets that so-and-so makes. And, with the Tone Poet series with Joe, Kevin's cutting it and RTI is pressing it, and the jackets are here at Stoughton. And one really cool thing about living in this area is these are all local companies.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Kevin's here, Stoughton's here, RT. I mean, they're Camarillo, but they're in the area. They're within a few hours of each other. So I could physically go and visit these places, and I can call them up and talk about the project. And I just realized, initially that started as I just really love specifically Blue Note, or just things that are made in the certain style. And then it became, that's, if I am going to do something, I want it to be at least on par with that. Musically, I am not Art Blakey or Horace Silver, but I want at least the production of it, I want it to feel like it's a real deal thing, Now it's one of those things of, once I've learned about that something could be of this level, I couldn't let myself put something out that wasn't of that level,
Right. Yeah.
So I knew, okay, I want to do this. I want it to be that. And to go back even further, just gearing up for the recording and researching how to get a certain sound and how the room was set up and how did Rudy do all this. Around that time is when I found the RBG Legacy website with Rich Capeless, DG Mono, and I just really loved his writing and all of his research work, and just and people as passionate as him about this stuff. And again, through actually the Jazz Bums, of just like being able to meet and reach out to all these people that are super knowledgeable and passionate about specific artists or recordings or eras, and just that information web that existed. So using Rich's, he actually has these diagrams of how Hackensack was set up and modeling how we would record after that. And I just wrote out to him, really appreciate everything you've put into the site and research. And I said, I'm getting ready to do this project, and I'm wondering if you'd be interested in writing some liner notes for us. We're kind of basically trying to do that thing, but, with my own music, but just all in the same room, one mic on the drums. And he said yes. So he has the liner notes for us. And then saying, okay, well, these are, if I want to get it cut by Kevin, I'll just email him. And I just emailed him. And it's been a lot of, this project has definitely been a lot of, there's this feeling of, whether it's musical artists or just people that you feel are like on some level, where I initially would feel this thing of, I can't even reach out to them. Like it wouldn't be appropriate, or they'll just ignore me, or this feeling of like, I'm not worthy of reaching out to so-and-so for whatever reason. A big part of this project has been me just saying, I don't care, I'm just going to do it. And they'll either just not respond, or they'll say, no, that's the worst that'll happen. And like every single person that I reached out to was like, oh, this sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to do it. Like Rich was down. I wrote out to Kevin. I actually did write out to Kevin initially to introduce myself about the project, to see if he would record it. And again, like we had never met. He didn't know me at all. He had never heard anything. Basically said, it's not really a studio for hire. I'd have to take apart my whole mastering lab to do it. It's more for my own project. So I'll have to pass. So okay, no problem. Like, well, when I get ready to master it, if you're interested in listening, still would love to have you involved. So okay. And then, we do the thing, and I message him back, say, are you still available for this? He goes, yeah, sure. Just send it over. And it just blew my mind. Okay, great. All right. I send it to him. And he wrote me back. He's like, Jacob, I'm sorry. I should have said yes before. This is great.
That was awesome, man. That's great.
Yeah. It's like, what do you say? Like, I'm kicking myself that I said, no, this sounds great. I just mastered it. Just so you know, it shipped out today along with some other Blue Note tapes. So you're in good company, for the pressing. And, if you ever want to do a different record at my place another time, like, let's talk. It's like, woo! Yes. That's nice. And I got that email. It was like super early in the morning. It was actually over the summer. Doug and Jimmy and I were teaching at the camp. It was like out of a movie. I'm sitting at my computer. I'm like, you guys, come here. And they like ran over on the sides of me and like reading the screen. I'm like, yeah, look what Kevin said. So that was cool. And, he was super excited to be on board with it. Same with RTI, with Stoughton, everyone that I spoke with there, it's that same thing where I guess I had this association of like, I can't go press there. That's where Blue Note and Atlantic, or, these big major corporate labels are pressing. And they say, yeah, I mean, that's part of our business. And then the other 80% is local or independent people just doing projects.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And so they were on board, and everything just kind of went from there. Just my continued conversations with Kevin. He had mentioned something about, oh yeah, if you ever want to, like, maybe I'll talk to Joe and see if you should come hang out with us when we do one of our Blue Note things. I was like, yeah, I will definitely do that. You just tell me whenever is good, and I will be there. And so a few months ago now, they just had me come in, and can't say what they cut that day, but just got to just be kind of a fly on the wall and sit and watch the process and just hold the original master tape of the thing that like is the reason, being Blue Note, like the reason that I play this music. And I'm like holding the thing. It's in Alfred's handwriting.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. And yeah, they put it on the thing. Joe did his little video, and then he said, I'm gonna cut to you and like hold up your jackets. Okay, whatever you guys say. And just the whole time they've been super supportive and just really into the project. And yeah, so the support's just been, I won't say unexpected, but just like just a lot of support.
Yeah,
well, Joe
it's
and Kevin
interesting.
are two of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, they've really
Yeah.
been awesome to us and come on our channel and all that stuff too. And we thought that would never happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we kind of project this thing, but they have been so kind and supportive and accessible. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The level
Especially,
also.
I think for this project, especially just the nature of it, like I told you, like I'm trying to just totally copy what they would have done back then. And then production wise, I'm literally just copying the Music Matters or Tone Poet. Like I used I said, like, your blueprint is the triangle that I need. Like I need Kevin, RTI, and Stoughton. Like I need it to be that for me to feel good about like putting it out there with stuff in the same genre or in the same vibe.
Yes.
Well, it's a hell of a formula,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And the quality comes across the record. You shared the high-res files, right, with us some months ago, and I've been going through, and exactly, we got the room vibe, the room feeling that you mentioned. We got that, I played in everywhere from headphones to my main system, but the idea comes across again, the room feeling plus, I think it's technical stuff. I mean, the Van Gelder stuff comes very loud and sometimes a little messy, quote unquote. And yours came very natural, warm, but at the same time with huge degree of clarity for each instrument. And things comes out of the right volume where they have to be, especially the piano, so crispy clear. And your drumming, although you're the drummer, you're the main instrument, it doesn't come across as loud and intrusive in a sense. Everything is perfectly balanced and blends well from my perspective, and it's quite an accomplishment. And very, like, as the name says, Silver Street, right? And this tributes to our Silver. But I felt like the side A is more on the pop side, and side B is sort of smoother. The ballads are there. It's a little different. Did you plan it this way? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what you just said about side A and B having a different mood. I think it just came down to the programming of. There's also a lot that I learned doing this project, knowing from the beginning that I wanted it to be an LP. Mm-hmm. Meaning, you have to be very aware of the time constraints of a record, of an LP. And most of the groups of that time in this instrumentation, hard bop quintet or sextet, they're doing maybe 4 to 6 songs. Mm-hmm. And they're still not stretching out a ton in terms of length of the tunes. And I wanted to do 8 songs. So, and there are some Horace records with 8, but from the very beginning, there was a lot of planning that had to go into that of, okay, 22 minutes per side. Not that every song has to be the same, but roughly 5 minutes a tune. we have to be really concise with the roadmap and the form, the arrangement of the tune. Okay, one chorus is this long. We need two to do head in, head out. You could take one, you could take one, you could take a half, and that's it. Or another tune of, okay, you can take one, and sometimes we have horns sharing a chorus, and then Doug just takes half one, and then we're out. Just to not only to keep the record moving, but just time constraints. I'd rather we ended up, I think we're at 40 minutes total with 8 songs, so that's it's not bad at all. I'd rather do that than have like we're 5 minutes over and I need to either cut a song or edit something. I didn't want to do that either. So just the amount of planning that went into it, knowing that it was going to be for an LP, timing songs in the rehearsals, really working them up so that they fit okay. So that was part of it. And then just a song order, programming them. I've been running a jam session for about 11 years. And so I've done tons of writing and arranging. I'm looking over here, I've got like 200 charts off of all my favorite Blue Note records that I've just transcribed the entire tune and the arrangement and all the horn parts. But programming a live set is very different than programming a record. And specifically in LP, because, especially in the 90s, 2000s, I think, Chris, you might have mentioned getting into the CDs now, they were just putting out much longer records.
Yeah.
And for me, 45 minutes is kind of the sweet spot. Like up to an hour is okay, especially if you're playing live. More than an hour for the band and the listener, that's just a lot to ask. And so some of these CDs from the 80s and 90s that I was listening to recently, they're up in the like 1 hour and 10 minutes. Like I know that there's an hour 20 on the CD, but we don't need to use it all. 45 minutes is that's the right amount to me. So knowing, the songs have to be a little bit more concise and specific timing. And the idea of programming the order of a CD is still more relevant than if something's a digital release where people are just going to skip around anyways, and you can just fast forward. You don't have to get through one song to get to the next. The LP, people probably aren't going to be doing that as much, if at all. So, Silver Street, I initially actually was thinking of a slightly different order for the first 2 tracks, because I was thinking about it. I think I was stuck in a live situation where you don't want to start your set with your loudest, fastest one. I mean, sometimes, but usually not. Like, give the band something to warm up with, and then now we're ready for this. But it was actually Paul Taverner who said, are you sure you want to do it like that? I think maybe flip this and this, and you'll have a more grabbing first track to put the title track first. And I was listening to some Horace records. There are times where he does that. The title track is first, when it's like a big high energy thing. And there's other times where that's at the end, like a closing piece, and there's something more accessible. I'm thinking, what's the Horace record, the yellow one with the hand on it?
Horoscope.
Horoscope, thank you. And Strollin opens the record. And, that's the Park Bench Dream tune that I have is kind of based off of that. And so I was thinking, that's like a nice opener. It's something, ease into it. And then we could do something else, and then maybe Silver Street. But through Paul's advice, I was like, you know what? Like, we need people to be grabbed by this record right away. Put the title track up first, high energy, faster tune, one thing, new groove after that, something kind of groovy, then Park Bench. That way you have like a nice little shape to that first half. It's kind of like a first set. And whether this is on the LP or even if it was on a CD or something, I think you have to think about the shape of the first half and the second half, but you have to think of it as one thing also. And I think just the nature of, okay, well, if we're starting with this, and I would like to break up tunes a little bit by, I don't want 3 songs in a row in the same key, or I don't want 3 songs in a row with the same tempo or feel. That pacing right of the first set, it then just necessitated, okay, well then the other 4 tunes will be on side B. And I think Sycamore Stomp is a better opener for the second side than any of those other tracks would be. And everyone kind of agreed, Cretaceous, it's kind of just a cool but like weird tune. It's hard to follow anything with that. I think that needs to close the record. So people either left feeling like, yeah, that was great, or what was, okay, let me start that over again and see what they're doing. And it's nice to have, a ballad or something more mellow before that high energy thing. So just really, just either on a text document with moving the titles around and just thinking of that order, just like little Lego pieces and experimenting with it. But yeah, I think it ended up being like a nice balance.
Street date is now, right? October 18th. You can pre-order from many different websites out there, mainly Mike from the In-Groove. Is he distributing or just no?
Yeah, he's also the distributor. I was going to say he there's a whole story that Mike actually recorded of this, and he put it up on one of his new release videos a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. But it was actually through Kevin. I was listening to some of the test pressings with him. And he's like, yeah, I think, Mike might be interested in this. He does my coherent stuff, and maybe I'll ask him, or you should reach out to him, see if he's interested in doing this. Cause I was just going to be selling it myself independently. And I happened to meet him very briefly at the OC record show down here. But and he's got a whole video of this story he probably says it better than me. But, everybody ever is emailing him, asking him, like, will you carry this? Or will you do this? And he usually is just overwhelmed with that stuff. But I happened to meet at the record show, I happened to meet a few people that were visiting from Phoenix and just chatting with them. And they were super into the project. And I played them some samples, I think just off my phone, and showed them the artwork. And they're like, yeah, this is so great. We know Mike, we know some other shops out there. We're gonna go try to put in a word for you, and we want to try to help you.
Oh, cool.
Happen with it. And so as Mike tells him that story, it's like, he's like, yeah, this guy, this guy in California was messaging me. Just didn't really respond to him just because everybody is like, I can't respond to everyone. And then like 3 different people are coming in the store individually, like saying like, oh, you got to hear this record. You got to this record. And he says, and I still kind of ignored it. It's like, and then I get a call from Kevin Gray saying like, hey, I just got this record. It's really good. You should check it out. He's like, oh, okay, I'll listen to it.
Wow.
We kind of wore him down.
Yeah, the full frontal assault. That's nice, man. That's awesome.
And again, like these were like individuals that just were really supportive, that wanted to do that. It's not like I told them, go do this for me. They said, no, we're going to go talk to him. And again, just coming back to just the support that I've seen from all these different people. And then I get a message from Mike like, hey, let's and he said, yeah, I'm interested, and you're got the whole deal. And again, something like if I wasn't using Kevin RTI Stoughton, like if it wasn't the level of production that it is, would he have been interested? Probably not. Hard to say, but
no, that makes sense. I mean, that means something to our community, right? Like when we see the Kevin Gray and RTI and Stoughton and all that, and just the style of the record, that's gonna help it sell. I mean, that makes it much easier for him to consider, especially when Kevin's calling him about it. I mean,
right?
Quite the pedigree you've already got on this record, man.
Yeah, it was, and from as a debut label release thing, I've got. It's the little hype sticker that's on here.
Oh, nice.
Even just things that you wouldn't have ever thought you would have needed to think about, like Stoughton doesn't do the center labels. So like I've got one person cutting it, one person pressing it, one place doing labels, one person doing jackets, one place doing Hype Stickers, one place doing photography, liner notes, graphic design, like just the amount of things to coordinate. Like all I've done for the last year is be like a business executive with this project. Like it took us 2 days to record, and then it's just been 8 months of like coordinating and emails and phone calls and visiting and checking out presses and making sure like every single character of this is okay and the right height here and the right color and does this match this, and stuff that is like is overwhelming. But I think what I was going to say about all that is I think in the end the effort and the detail and the commitment to all that, I think I would hope makes for a very nice presentation debut, and make sure everyone knows that like I'm not just passionate about it but like serious about it.
Right.
This was a lot of planning, a lot of coordinating, and if I never put out another record again, like I can be very proud of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Musically,
well, I mean, now that you got the invitation to Kevin's, you kind of have to make another one, man.
This is true. Yeah. And he said, you'll probably be a little tied up with this for a bit, but whenever you're ready, let me know. And I told him, like, I already have like more than a whole nother album's worth of material that's ready to go. Like I'm just in the middle of this still. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And the thought of like, doing it with Kevin or on some label where I can literally just play and then walk away and not like, okay, now that I played, let me go spend the next 10 months stressing over every detail about it. Like it'd be nice to just be a musician.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Well, we've been talking for a little over an hour now. Felipe, you got any final thoughts or questions for Jacob?
Well, thanks for stopping by, Jacob. It was really nice talking to you, learning more about your career in general, but specifically this project that came to fruition finally. And wishing you the best. Looking forward to get a physical copy. And my high-res files already sound great. So very looking forward to listen to this record.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I would echo the same. Just thanks for hanging out with us. I listened to the files a few times now. They sound great. I'm looking forward to hearing the record, and we obviously can tell the passion and kind of love you put into the project. So we'll definitely put links in the description of the video on how you guys can pre-order a copy and to your website and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.